This time of the year, late September, early October, very often I think about animals. And there's some reasons for that. One is that something I enjoy doing is going to the fairs that we have around at this time. I recently went to the Big E up in Springfield, and I'm hoping to get to the Topsfield Fair. And I think a lot of people enjoy going to fairs because I know that there's a Deerfield Fair that people go to, and the Freiburg Fair, and all sorts of other fairs. And one of the things that they have at any of these fairs are animals. And children are always fascinated when they see the animals. For example, up at the Big E this past week, there was a mother pig with all the piglets running around, and the piglets were frolicking and having all sorts of fun, and the kids were fascinated. And mother just kind of sat and let them do what they were going to do, and was seeming quite content as well. And then you went over maybe to where the cows were, and you'd see a milking demonstration, or that particular day there was a calf. And again, the children were all fascinated with what they were seeing, and they got to see sheep get sheared if they went to the sheep barn. And there were all sorts of different things. So one of the things that you can't help but notice when you see something like that is how much joy they bring to the children. And also, that they have a certain dignity and worth about them when you see them. Whether it be the cows or the horses or what have you, they just, there's just a certain way about them that you see a bit of God's grandeur in them. And then also at this time of the year, our parish and our collaborative, and certainly many parishes over the weekend had the blessing of the animals in honor of St. Francis of Assisi. And people brought their pets to their different parishes, and the dogs and the cats and the rabbits and the guinea pigs and all sorts of other little critters were blessed. And some people wanted their animals blessed a bit more, hoping it was going to hopefully going to maybe credit some better behavior in the future. I don't know if that's always works. It doesn't always work with the animals that I've had over the years. But again, you see the joy of the people who bring their pets to be blessed. And also, again, kind of the dignity of the pets, and the happiness of the pets, and the adorable qualities and what have you. And even the naughty qualities that sometimes can make us laugh. And of course, we also have at this time of the year the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. And St. Francis is so often associated with animals. Probably there's more than a few people who might have St. Francis statues in their garden, and he might be holding the birds. Sometimes he's also at the actual bird bath kind of thing. And, we just had this kind of serene St. Francis with the animals. And for a lot of people, that's the image that they have of him. And sometimes it might be the only image they have of him. But if that's the only image that we have of St. Francis, as wonderful as it is, and as heartwarming as it is, it's also missing a huge portion of who St. Francis was. Because while St. Francis loved nature and loved animals, and some of the canticles and things that he wrote can give tribute to that, that's not the reason why we revere him. We revere him in the church, and the reason why he's among our favorite saints is the way he was called to give up everything, and he literally gave up everything to follow Jesus Christ. He encountered a man with leprosy, and that was something that stirred his heart to minister to others, and that's what he began to do. But he also had a powerful image that he saw, and it was a cross. And it was a cross in the church that was all torn down, San Damiano. And the church was falling apart and was on its last legs, but St. Francis felt comfort praying there. And he heard the words to rebuild his church. And if in some ways, it was looking around, it might have been rebuilding that particular church building. But St. Francis took it in a much larger interpretation. And what he did was set out to rebuild the church, rebuilding the body of Christ. In particular, by the way he served the poor, also by his life of prayer, and his gathering others to join him in his very important work. And the Franciscans have been rebuilding the church ever since the days of St. Francis, and they continue to do so as well, because the church is something that constantly needs to be built up by preaching, built up by good works, built up by closely following Jesus Christ, which St. Francis did, and we're called to do as well. But I think St. Francis also had a bit of a secret, or not really, but not a secret he wanted to keep to himself, but a secret to his success that in some ways our gospel alludes to. Now, we have a story in the gospel that is one that can oftentimes put people's blood pressure much higher than it should be, because I think everybody associates with Martha, because we've all been the one who's been left to do all the work. We've all been the one who has done all the work and somebody else gets the credit. We know what it's like to be Martha. Now, others might say we're more like Mary in trying to get out of the work, but we always associate, or so many of us associate, with Martha. But when you look at the story, Jesus tells Martha that she needs to be a little bit more like Mary. But he doesn't criticize her. He reminds her of the importance of the time spent with him, time that Mary is taking advantage of. He wants her to take advantage of the same thing too. What the Lord is reminding us in this particular gospel is not that we should be shirking our responsibilities or put important things aside, but rather the important work we do has to also be balanced with a life of prayer, a life of contemplation, a life of being with Jesus, and being strengthened. Because so often, it's the good that we do, like Martha is doing, that leads us to prayer. But so often, too, it's the prayer that leads us to the good work that we're called to do. The two go hand in hand. And St. Francis seemed to know that, as he would sometimes take time aside to go into nature and to appreciate God's beauty and appreciate all created creatures. But that was what strengthened him to go about preaching good news to the poor, serving those in need, and giving us an example of how we can follow Jesus Christ. So I think that on this feast of St. Francis of Assisi today, we certainly thank God for his life. We also learn from his life, but also remember that if we want to follow in his footsteps as followers of Jesus Christ, what's very important is our prayer needs to lead us to action, and our action needs to lead us back to prayer.